there is a journey that we all have to go on as we start putting the digital twin in practice. So, as an asset owner, we have assets all over England. Some of them date from Roman times. Some of them date, from a few weeks ago. And we find ourselves in a state where we have a combination. We have some really smart technology. We do our site inspections with apps. We've got structured data that we're buying. But we also have a legacy of data in cupboards, data on CDs, and probably data not even existing. So how do we take that journey? What is it that we need to do to make the transition? For me, I often reflect what has happened to me in my life that has been influenced by digital. And I think for me, summing it up, I can now access information at the touch of a button. I can go to the airport with my passport and get on the flight that I've booked without any other intervention. That's my primary identifier. I can find out the next train. I can find out what cinema is showing my favourite film. And I think it's all about connecting. And I think sometimes with digital, it can be quite confusing about what you're trying to achieve. And to me, it's about achieving the ability to connect in a way that you have that information at your fingertips as and when you want it. Now, I probably have a sort of a view on technology because ultimately what I want to achieve is the communication from my assets into my whole life asset management decision-making model. But how do we do that? Technology plays a part, but data is very key to that and making that happen. I think in particular it's about making sure that the data is relevant. We have lots, but we probably have data that we don't even know we need at this present moment in time. It needs to be structured. If we're going to use technology effectively, it needs to be structured in a way that we can use technology. It's very easy for everyone to create their own ways of doing things, and I think actually standing back and saying, is there an existing standard for this? And adopting that as your first port of call is actually quite a cultural change rather than going away and trying to create it by yourself. And then look at what can be accessed by open source. So again, not creating it yourself, but actually what sort of things are readily available to you that you can start utilising quickly and easily. There is a lot of supporting guidance out there, and the Environment Agency was mandated to deliver BIM Level 2. And I think during that journey, which I've been on for now sort of 6 or 7 years, it's really highlighted the need to really understand your data and how you operate it. And the standards that are out there really help to provide the digital foundations. So it pushes you to think about how you classify, how you standardize your data, how you exchange and you move information between yourselves and your supply chain. But it also has helped us to understand, how can we deliver this for our existing asset management business? So we are gradually introducing the BIM processes to our existing documentation. We're applying the same standards to that. And we're putting spatial boundaries on that. So as the data and information comes in, we can actually find it spatially as well as in a database. I think that's a very important factor and not to be missed. As part of BIM, we have a sort of BIM implementation. As a client, we have our employer's information requirements. I think this is a very key document to clients to really understand what data and information you need and how you need it, and be specific. We've also got our information delivery plan, so we've identified what is the documents and what is the data that we need delivered through the project, and we've classified it. And we've classified it so that in future we can tap in 3 codes or a name, in the same way as I can do a Google search. Actually, I can find exactly where that information is and which asset it relates to. And I think this, again, very key to making sure that you can deliver that digital aspect in the future. And then we've got a common data environment. It is the project domain at this present moment in time, but the technology allows you to connect, and you'll see an image a little bit later where we're connecting using that common data environment and being able to access documents from our GIS platform, for an example. So, all of these technologies, if you start doing things in a structured way and use those technologies effectively, you can start making those digital connections. You can start beginning to be smarter. Very interesting, because we're going back to basics, really looking at a conceptual data model, and this has often been the domain of our IT departments and our systems, but actually we're taking that out and we're looking at it from a whole asset management life cycle. So that's from the sort of project, pre-project to asset to decommissioning, and sort of looking at how can we structure that model going forward? Where do we need to make those connections? And ensuring that as we make our IT investments, that actually we're following that model. But most importantly, also looking at how we can bring that data back in and ensuring that that data is not sitting in an IT system, but is actually readily available for us to do smarter things with it. And this is a journey that we're on, but I think it's very important to recognise that you have to start doing things that you haven't traditionally done. So introducing data architects, bringing in data scientists and people that really understand data into your fold as you start going on this journey. You have really got to think of data as an asset in its own right. It's got to be treasured. It is your crown jewels. And what I think, particularly with the Environment Agency, we've existed for a long time. We've existed before, computers existed in one form or another. So we don't always think about data and how we need to describe data. We're very reliant on people knowing how to do the right thing. Now, that's fine. However, when you start joining up your data and you start trying to do smarter things with it, you realise how important it is to have your data definitions and how important it is to start building your rule sets that enable you to make those connections at a point in the future. Now, this is quite a busy slide, but I really wanted to just emphasise that there's lots of things, little elements that you need to start looking at. And I just wanted to pull out a couple of things that I haven't mentioned before. Thinking about your data storage and management, as you start thinking about the technology and the smarter ways of collecting data, there's huge quantities of data that you're collecting. Now, that's challenging us as a business. How are we going to store it? How are we going to use it? How are we going to push it out to the technologies and the tools in a way that we're not dependent on a particular IT provider? That's a challenge. Thinking about translating, how can we translate the rules that we've got that are often captured in documents, technical guidance? How can we transform that? And actually, what we have discovered, as you start digging in, you realise how there might be conflicts within your rules. And, without airing dirty washing, we've expected our suppliers to deal with these conflicting standards, and then we wonder why perhaps we don't get the assets that we really wanted because our standards were not good. But if we're going to digitally transform them, we need to understand what it is we really want, make sure it's clear, and make sure that it's in a digitally accessible format. I think having the skills is really important as well. I think it's quite difficult at the moment to really understand what those skills that we need. I think we're moving into a place where we will have to accept that we will we'll have to retrain or train people that we've already got to become more digitally competent. But we'll also have to bring in new skill sets within our teams, and that is going to be a change. I think it is also important about thinking how you can share data, particularly with the desire to create a digital twin. How can we start sharing so that people have more visibility of our data? And I'll have some slides a little bit later on that describes that. Just to sort of finish off around automating the interfaces, again, as an asset owner with quite a lot of supporting IT, actually delivering APIs is quite challenging. It challenges your IT providers. They're not happy necessarily with using APIs because it's a modern way of doing things. It's not tried and tested, as someone said to me. I'm like, well, actually, the internet works on APIs, so don't tell me that it's not connected. But I think these are all the challenges because you're disrupting the status quo, and you need to be aware of those challenges. So I think moving forward as well, we do need industry collaboration. And if we think about what's happened in our business, in sort of the wider digital transformation, there are businesses such as Amazon who have perfected the buying online and have sold that skill to others. What that's ended up as me as a customer, I can go on and I can see and I can do my shopping online with a very familiar look and feel. And I think what we need to be thinking about is how can we do the same? How can we be open to sharing? How can we lead that change? How can we lead that place where we're happy to share and we're promoting when someone's doing it and they're doing it well? Let's look at how we can share that and introduce that across the board. We do need to think about the common data for common assets. I think that is going to be a big challenge going forward. And we have to find out how we can reduce those mundane tasks. And I think I'll give you a very good, quick example here. We're looking at introducing CAD and modelling standards. We've calculated that it costs us £2 million a year for people recreating designs as it moves through the supply chain and it comes back into our business. And it doesn't deliver us the information that we need to put into our asset management system. If you duplicate that, across the board, we're wasting a lot of money by not having standards that we can rely and trust on. And I think, as an asset owner, it's very important that you think about these things. So start building the digital twin. Last April, we introduced our internal GIS platform called EasyMap. We started unlocking some of the data that we already had within our business into a GIS platform. And that has grown over time. And within a year, we're now the third most popular site. And what we have done is we've started bringing together that data and information that would have previously existed in disparate systems. People would have had to have gone into those individual systems to access that data. We've brought it together, but we've also listened to the customers. What are you trying to do? And actually instigate some tools that allow them to start interrogating that information and bringing that information to life. In the top right corner, we've also productized our LiDAR data. So we have a whole wealth of LiDAR data that is publicly available. It provides a lot of rich content for asset management purposes, but as it stood, it relied on every individual asset owner going in, downloading the information they needed, and creating the cross-section information that they wanted. We've taken that burden away and looked at introducing a sort of product that allows with the GIS tools to cut and actually find that information that they need. On the bottom right, we are using our common data environment, and you can can see there, looking at accessing our data and or documents related to the assets. So teams no longer need to go into the data portal. They can just click and find that information, provided they've got permission to do it. And on the bottom left, you'll see our open data portal, and I encourage everyone to take a look. So we launched that again last April, and we are now opening up our data, which we have had open for a long time. But within that portal, there is now API connectivity. So we encourage anyone who requires Environment Agency asset information to link to that. They can have its overnight update on our asset conditions and asset information. We have also introduced our maintenance programs, and we will shortly be introducing our capital programs. And I think this is an important stage where, by sharing, being more open about sharing that information, it hopefully will encourage other people to engage with our data, and we begin to see what that digital twin might begin to look like. I think what is very important as well is to think about that single source of the truth. What you find as you start digging as a business such as ours is you have lots of versions of the truth. So you've really got to take ownership of looking at how your data is managed behind the scenes, and that, as an organisation such as ours, is often managed by a third party. So looking at how that data is managed and how you can make sure that is not duplicated by perhaps, by design, that you can actually drill it down and link to that single source. So the data that appears on our open data portal is the same data that appears on our Easy Map. So we're only managing that data once, but delivering it to many, many different tools. I think that's an important message to take away. And just really to finish up, it's just some final thoughts from me about some of the steps that you need to take. And I don't intend to go through them, conscious of time, but I encourage everyone to start building your own digital twin. Invariably, I'm sure that you have the information and the technology and the data that allows you to start doing it, and I encourage you all to have a go.